So welcome. I'm Dr. Ross from Four Points Family Chiropractic, and obviously if you are viewing this, you are at home. All right. We usually do this. We love to do this in our office in an interactive atmosphere where we're able to show you things and ask you questions. So instead, I'm going to interact with the camera. So if you feel that this is awkward and weird, it might feel a little awkward and weird, but that's okay. All right. So this is what we call the quick and better results consult. One thing I always tell patients in our office here at Four Points Family Chiropractic is that the most important time that we'll ever spend together is actually during this time. Because our goal here is not only to get you well, but the other important part of this is that we want to teach you on how to stay well. And that means that we need to dig into your lifestyle. All right? What you do outside this office is just as important and as effective to your care than the active care that we do here in the office. All right, so we want to give you as much tools and information and material that you can implement in your life so you can get the best results here in our office. All right, so I talk fast, and the other doctors, Dr. Mir and Dr. Nibble, will be joining me here along the way, and we all talk fast. So if you listen fast, we'll get to this material quite quickly. All right, so we're going to start first with the principles of what we're trying to accomplish here. All right. One thing you can see here on the screen is that, the picture of my grandmother. And I always ask patients, what do you think is more important, quality or quantity of life? What would you rather have? All right, and that's right. Most people do always answer the question that they rather have quality of life than quantity of life. All right, you want to have a life that you can enjoy versus a life that you don't want to live. So my grandmother here is 90 years of age, and would you love to have the vitality of a woman at 90 years of age that you can do that? All right, that's our goal for you. All right, I'm just kidding. That's not my grandmother. But again, this is the goal that we would love to have for all of our patients. We break lifestyle down into three main components. There's nothing in your lifestyle that you cannot reference that do not fit into what you eat, how you move, and how you think. And we're going to talk about all three of these tonight, and that's going to be quite the homework to do because there's a lot of material. Each of these actually stand on their own. We actually do more advanced workshops of each topic, but we're going to give you 20% of the material to give you 80% of the results. That's called the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. All right. So we're going to talk about things you can implement right away today, right after we're done with this consult and workshop together. Now, where all three of these things, eat well, move well, and think well, meet in the middle, the nexus, that's where your potential lives. That's where wellness lives, and that's where your body thrives. All right. Our goal is to make sure that all three of these are balanced. So we have a lot of patients come in our office, and we hear a lot of stories, but we always hear stories where people love and pick certain things of their lifestyle that they were definitely emphasize. So we have patients that thrive on making sure that their nutrition is the best, and they make sure that they move and exercise every single day. But in terms of thinking well, they don't really have a whole lot of strategies. So if you were to think this as a moving wheel, so to speak, imagine if you put so much energy and resources into eating well and so many energy and resources into moving well, but you put hardly anything into thinking well, meaning that your life is just full of stress. How does that wheel move? It'll actually it'll be kind of like a clunk, and it takes more energy for that wheel to move through life. We've got to make sure that we're implementing and putting in strategy in all three of these categories equally. All right. So we want to do these habits over continuously together over a continuous period of time, not for 7 days, 10 days, or 21 days, but it's like a living document that we're going to continue as we learn. We're putting more things into these bank accounts each and every day of our lives to making sure we're always meeting and exceeding the goals that we want in terms of quality of life. So before we get started, dive into the material, I want everyone to understand that what we talk about is factual. It's not an opinion. Everything that we talk about is based on research or articles. We are all geeks here. We love information. And anything that we reference here in this workshop or consult, make sure you ask your doctor if you'd like to if any of the references to the material, where it comes from, if you want more information about it, because we all have it here for you. So the first thing I'm going to start with, and I always ask patients this as well, is that how long do you think that your body was engineered to last? All right. Now that's a pretty peculiar question because we see people living and dying all around us, and some people have great lives and they're cut short, or people that have long lives. But what are we engineered to do? Well, there's a great research study that was done at Harvard Medical School back in 2006, and this was actually published, in 2003. It was actually published in the Discover magazine in November 2003, and it asks this very question. It goes, how long can the human body last? All right. Now, according to the people at Harvard Medical School, the top physiologists in the world, so to speak, they said that our bodies can last anywhere between 120 to 150 years. Now, if you look at what goes on here in America, according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, who are the bosses of healthcare and healthcare statistics, the average age of a person here in America is anywhere between, I would say, 79 and 82, give or take some change, all right, depending on male or female. So I asked you, do you think that we're living to our potential? Absolutely not, right? If we're engineered to live to 120 to 150 years, why aren't we? The next question is, if we did live to our potential to 120 to 150 years, what is the cause of death at that point? All right? So a lot of people were asked that, oh, it's the heart or it's our spine. Well, actually, the organ that would not allow us to live past these 120 to 150 years actually our liver. Because our liver, like a gland that's a filter in our body, purifies our blood, all right, just like any filter in your home or your car. If it gets old and it gets clogged up, what do? You replace it. Well, unfortunately, we can't just replace our livers as they get clogged up. So if we were to die of true natural cause of death and live to our potential, the limiting organ would be our liver. How many deaths in America do you think are attributed to this? That's right, not many at all. Actually, the #1 cause of death in America is, that's right, you guessed it, is heart disease. Over 750,000 people die of heart disease in this country, or complications of that one diagnosis each and every year in this country. All right, so we need to understand that we don't even live to our potential. Now, what's happening in our country is that through, obviously, biomedical engineering, that we are able to allow people to live longer. Now, remember, I said live longer. It doesn't mean that we're guaranteeing any quality of life. It's just that we can keep your heart going, your lungs pumping, and that might be through aids or machinery or pharmaceuticals, but it doesn't really guarantee you any quality of life. So what's happening is that we are seeing people living longer, all right? There are people that are living past 100 years of age. Those are called centenarians. And those centenarians are actually the fastest growing age population in our country. According to the CDC, at the time that we're doing this in 2020, that there's approximately anywhere between 100 to 150,000 centenarians alive in this country today. All right, you might actually know someone who's a centenarian. All right, and that's great. Now the key is how is the quality of life? Because statistics show that because of these people living, we're able to keep them alive longer. It has grown a need for what we call nursing home real estate, or the nursing home generation, as these people cannot even carry out their daily activities of living on their own, meaning bathing, food prep, and things like getting dressed or just doing the basic necessities on a day-to-day basis. All right. Now, because of the baby boomers, all right, the CDC predicts that this number of centenarians are going to get larger as time goes on, and they're predicting by the year 2050. Get ready for this, that there's going to be over 4 million centenarians alive in this country. How do you think this country is going to look in terms of a society with over 4 million centenarians around that are needing aid to live their day-to-day life? We want to make sure that is not you, all right? Because what you put into your lifestyle and your health today will pay dividends as you age. Do not wait for that crisis to hit before you start taking action. So, that being said, if you ask these people that live to 100 years of age or more today, you said, hey, if you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently? All right. Now, I'm sure you would not hear that, I wish I would have worked more hours. I wish I would have stressed more. I wish that I would have paid attention to money more, right? You mostly hear that if I would have knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Now, how many of you have heard that someone you know that's older than you have said that? I wish I would have taken better care of myself. I knew I was going to live this long. All right. Guess what? Health you can't redo, right? And you're never given a manual on how to do it, all right? So your principles, philosophy, and belief systems when it came to your health came from who? That's right, your parents. Your parents were your biggest influencers when it came to your health because you pretty much adopted their philosophy in terms of health unless you've had some sort of epiphany in your life that you've changed the way you do things. And this usually happens to people that they have a healthcare crisis, a heart disease or a heart attack or something that has really changed your life, and you wake up and say, you know what I've been doing has not been serving me right, and I got to change the way that I do things, all right? So with that being said, before we get into the strategies, we need to talk about that belief system. You see, your belief system is basically your strategies in action, all right? So we need to talk about where your belief systems came from. And for a lot of you, when it comes to health, your belief systems came from your parents, all right? When you were born, you were never given a manual on how to handle this thing in your life called health. So you adopted, most likely, the belief systems that your mother or father taught you. And for some of you, fortunately or unfortunately, you weren't able to pick your parents. So you got what you got, all right? And until there was a crisis or some sort of health event in your life, you really just did what they did. And a lot of you that did have a health crisis in terms of, for example, like a heart attack, you wake up and you say, wait a minute, what I've been doing has been not serving me correctly, and I got to change the way that I do things. So if our strategies are not in line with your belief systems, the chances of you following through and doing these things are probably nil, all right? So the first thing we got to do is make sure that your belief systems are congruent so you can do the strategies. And once you start implementing the strategies, then you can start raising the bar or the standards of terms of what you consider health is, all right? The basic American today, what their standards are, if you can wake up in the morning and you don't have a symptom, and you can drive yourself to work, and you can sit in a cubicle, and you can sit in front of a computer, drive yourself home, and get home and eat a meal and sit on the couch and do it all over the next day, you're considered a healthy American. That's our standard. It's a very poor standard. All right, we want to live a life of vitality. We want to make sure that you want to do everything that you want to do for the longest period of time. So when I talk about belief systems, I've gathered this information over years of talking to patients, and one of the belief systems I'll tell you that gets most people in trouble when it comes to their health is that people base their health on the way they feel, all right? Now I'm going to ask you, if you were to base your health on 100% on the way you feel, do you think that this is an accurate way of measuring how healthy you are? You're right, it's not, all right? Because if you look at the number one killer, which you mentioned just a little while ago, that the number one killer in America today is heart disease, all right? How many people do you know that had a heart attack with no prior symptoms before the heart attack? Yeah, including myself, my father-in-law, right? He had a heart attack. He had no prior symptoms. He didn't know he had heart disease because plaquing of an artery that causes a heart attack takes up to 15 years. It has to be anywhere between 80 to 90% occluded, meaning that plaque is continuously building up over those many years before the heart attack can take place. Can you feel that plaque building up? Of course not. So basing your health on how you feel is actually a very poor measure of our health. The number two killer in America is cancer. How early can you feel the symptoms of cancer? You can't, right? Usually when you have the symptoms of cancer, you're very late into the problem. That's why this belief system obviously gets a lot of people in trouble, and a lot of people base their health on how they feel because we're actually taught that through the media, through commercials from pharmaceutical companies, or even what your doctor might tell you that, hey, if you feel good, don't come see me. Come see me when you're feeling bad. Well, guess what? Usually by the time the symptoms come on, you're very late into a health problem to begin with. Wouldn't it be better to try to stay well versus trying to get well? It's always easier to stay well versus trying to get well, all right? So we got to take that into account, how you're measuring your health. Second belief system, say, wait a minute, if I do get sick or there is a problem, I'll just take a pill or have a surgery, I'll fix it, and then move on. We think health is mechanistic, meaning that it's an episode, it's an event, all right, we'll go through that event and then we move on. Guess what? Health is vitalistic. It adds together. Things that you do are compounding in your life, right? So if you're implementing strategies today, tomorrow, the next week, the next month, and over years, you'll notice that your your functionality, your vitality will increase over time. It's the same thing if you don't do anything, that you'll see your health degrade over time slowly, all right? And then you hit that health crisis, and then you're on a pharmaceutical drug to help cope with it. I always ask patients as well, say, as people age, do their pharmaceutical list of drugs they're taking get smaller or shorter as life goes on? A lot of people say, yeah, that list gets longer. We see it here in our office, all right? When we take the intake forms, we look at people's histories, we see anywhere patients taking, a couple of pharmaceutical drugs, anywhere from a dozen to 15. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. The average Medicare patient in America today takes over 7 prescription drugs in a day. That's someone who's 65 years and older. Here in Texas, we have one of the highest averages for prescription drugs per Medicare patient. It's over 12 medications. And that, it sounds insane, but this is the type of life that we're living in. We just want to make sure that you're not one of those statistics, all right? So don't wait for the crisis to happen before you take action. So let's compare the U.S. to other industrialized countries and see how well we fare when it comes to the health of our population. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, is basically the bosses of healthcare statistics for the entire world, gathers this information, and they usually do this study about every 4 years. And they rate the top industrialized countries based on 25 criteria of the population, anywhere from infant birth rate, mortality rate, and it basically puts it in order in terms of healthiest population to least healthiest populations. So we as Americans here in the U.S., all right, we obviously consume the most pharmaceutical drugs, all right? Now, the fact that these pharmaceutical drugs are consumed the most, all right, actually have given results that it actually creates a bigger problem. You've already heard like over opiate use, painkillers and things like that, and addiction. Well, therapeutic drugs each year kills about 200,000 people here in America, plus about 9 million hospitals, about a third of the hospital admits, and costs us $182 million a year in damages. These statistics, I'm telling you, actually comes from the Journal of American Medical Association in 1998. Now you say, Dr. Ross, why are you telling me such old statistics, right? And these are statistics that are over 20 years old. Well, when these statistics were released, who do you think got the black eye, right? That's right, pharmaceutical companies. They say, wait a minute, you're telling people that what we're giving them the solution to fix their health is actually causing another wave or problems behind them. And this is true. So here we are in 2020. Do you think that these numbers have gotten bigger or smaller? That's right. Most people always say they've gotten bigger, all right? There is a doctor called Dr. Gary Null. He's a PhD MD that has devoted his life to studying what's called the iatrogenic causes of death in America, meaning that deaths that could have been avoided within the healthcare system if we did not implement strategies like pharmaceutical therapeutic use. He estimates that the number of Americans die each year due to unnecessary strategies of pharmaceutical drugs is equivalent to a jumbo jet crashing into Manhattan every other day. He estimates these numbers are over 400,000 lives a year, all right? Now, you can look at his research. You can research him on the website. His name is Dr. Gary Null, N-U-L-L, and you can see the research that he's put out to this. Now, he's not the only one, all right? It is well documented that the third leading cause of preventable death here in America is actually our own healthcare system, all right? So that means that we could be avoiding unnecessary death just if we stopped doing the strategies that we do within the healthcare system. Prescribing drugs, cocktail of drugs, surgeries that are necessary, surgeries that go bad, all right? So let's compare America to the rest of the world. Now, the World Health Organization, WHO, which are the bosses of healthcare for the world, does a study every 4 years that ranks the top 40 most industrialized countries based on their health, their population. And these studies are done on pretty much 25 criteria of anywhere from infant birth rate, mortality rates, and they rank countries from healthiest to least healthiest. So out of 40 countries, all right, in the last study that was done, where do you think the U.S. ranked? You think we'd be near the top? We actually ranked 37th healthiest out of 40 industrialized countries in the world. That means, statistically speaking, that you can go live in 36 other countries and you'll have a better chance of health with you, your family, your loved ones than 36 other countries. I always ask patients, can you even name 36 other countries? That's how far down the list we are. Now, if you look what we do in our model in terms of healthcare, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, we're the #1 spending in healthcare. That means that we throw most money in healthcare than any other industrialized country, double the #2, which is Great Britain. And we consume the most pharmaceutical drugs per capita than any industrialized country as well. We consume over 50% of the world's pharmaceuticals right here in America, and guess how much of the world population we represent? It's very small, it's just a little over 5%. So if the model was so good, and the model was so right, and it worked so well, if we spent the most money, took the most drugs in our healthcare system, you think we'd be one of the healthiest? Unfortunately, we're not. We're actually one of the countries at the very end. Now you ask, what countries are the best? What are the top 5 and the top 10? Well, a lot of the countries in the top 3 are actually Asian countries, anywhere from Japan and China. You ask, why is that? Well, it all comes down to they don't have any more resources, know-how, knowledge. Really what they have is a different lifestyle. So what happened here in America, 2 MD doctors, a father and son, took on the mission of studying lifestyle in Asian countries, and they wrote this book called the China Studies. In the book is a very well written book. If you've heard of it, it's been published for about 10 years now, and you probably have to read it about 3 times to get all of the innuendos and information out of it. But basically, they compare cohorts of study from anywhere from 3 to 10 years, and they follow populations around in China and other Asian countries and compared what they do in terms of lifestyle. So for example, what they did is they compared the number of motorized vehicles in China compared to the US. And at the time that the book was written, because the numbers are different now, but at the time the book was written, guess how many motorized vehicles existed per 1,000 capita in Japan compared to the US? It's 12 vehicles per 1,000 population, all right? And here in America, it was approximately 650. Now, if you look at today's numbers, I think Singapore actually has the least ratio of motor vehicles to 1,000 population. I think right now it's about 149 per 1,000, which still is a far cry where we have here in America, which is close to 800 per 1,000 population. So this just tells you a little bit about the different lifestyle. But the reason why that statistic is so important is because you think, what is a mass mode of transportation in places like China and Japan? All right, and the one thing that they do is they walk and they bike. All right, and they have exercise just built into their lifestyle. All right, they don't have to schedule it in their day, go to a physical building, get on a machine, and do exercise. And it's such a cumbersome thing to do and disciplined thing to do that it's just built into the lifestyle. And there's many other things that are just built into their lifestyle in terms of nutrition and meditation and mental health, that they don't face the same challenges that we do here in the Western world. So this last statistic is 5 or 6 Americans that have heart disease or cancer, complication of those 2 diagnoses here in America, meaning that you cannot ask anyone that doesn't know somebody that has or has passed away from one of those diseases. It is in epidemic proportions, and unfortunately the statistic is something that we really don't need to read on a report. We're actually living this today here in America. So the projections were, when we took all these numbers and said, well, how much money do we actually throw at it? Well, in 2018, we spent $4.3 trillion in healthcare here in America. All right, that's a lot of zeros. It's a big number, yet we ranked 37th out of 40. So that should piss you off a little bit and maybe get you motivated, because again, we have all the resources, we have all the know-how and all the knowledge right here in America, yet we do very poor when it comes to the health of our population. So we want to obviously show you a better way. And how do we do this? Well, I always tell patients, history is a great teacher. We can learn a lot what has happened in the past. So if we use history, for example, Henry Ford, everyone knows what Henry Ford was for, right? He was known for the assembly line, right? He invented the gasoline engine in the automobile, and it changed the way we use transportation. Now, if at the time when all this was going on, if we took a survey of the population and said, hey, when it comes to transportation, what do we need? And the general population would probably told you, hey, we need more horses and we need them to go faster, all right? So we need more of them and we need them to be more robust. Now we could have followed that same path and evolved what we were doing with buggy and horse, but Henry said, nah,
We need to change it completely. We don't need to evolve that theory. We need to revolutionize it. So he changed it 180 degrees. And I'm telling you, when it comes to our health and our healthcare here for us Americans, we don't need to evolve what we're doing. We need to revolutionize it. Because if I were to ask you in terms of how we can make things better, do you think I said, hey, if we built more hospitals and we had more doctors and we had more drugs, do you think that'll make our populations healthier, make you healthier? Really think about that, because the answer is no, it's not. Really, what is going to change things is that if we change our lifestyle, all right? So, when we talk about lifestyle, you have to think about most people on when and how they're going to do that. And most people will do that, unfortunately, when we talked about earlier, is when they have a crisis and they wake up and they say, okay, I need to do something different because this is not working for me. Well, that is a reactive way of doing things. We want to be proactive, right? It's easier to keep you well than to get you well. So if we're to take a look at the evolution of this and say, okay, where do we need to be? And then say, okay, where do we revolutionize? Well, currently, we're in the prevention of disease, all right? Everyone hears the word prevention, and it's a big, buzzword within healthcare. We have Prevention Magazine. We even have prevention television shows and things that you can investigate and read. But really, when we talk about preventative measures, like tests that you go get done, things like a mammogram, prostate exam, annual physicals, let me ask you, are you making yourself any healthier by doing those preventative tests? No, you're not. All you're doing is looking for a diagnosis so we can treat. But if your tests come back normal, what's usually what they tell you? Well, the doctors will tell you, or the healthcare practitioner will tell you, say, hey, everything looks good, come back in 2 years, we'll repeat. Come back in 5 years, and we'll repeat. Until we find something abnormal, we have really nothing for you in terms of how to make yourself healthier than where you are now. So we fall back to the old way of thinking, is the treatment of disease, meaning that until there is a disease to treat, we really don't have any, our model really doesn't work for you. So basically, even in the world of prevention, we're just waiting, all right, for a disease to be diagnosed. Now, don't get me wrong, early detection is valuable in a lot of cases, but yet we're still focused on waiting for something to happen before we take action. Where we need to move is the revolution in terms of promoting your health. Things that you do on an everyday basis that increases the value of your health, all right? So, I tell people, there's one industry in healthcare that's mastered this, all right? And I'm hopefully all of you guys do this at home, and you do it every time you wake up in the morning, and hopefully you do it every time you go to bed. What do you think that is? What do you do every day to increase the health of a certain type of a certain area of your body that you do every single day? That's right, you brush and floss your teeth. Now, why do you brush and floss your teeth? Is there something wrong with them? Was they diagnosed with something wrong? No, because you were told when you were younger that if you brush and floss your teeth every single day, that they'll last you a lifetime, right? So we follow that philosophy. We believe in that philosophy. We've proven that philosophy. And we know that, generations before us that didn't brush and floss, that they would lose their teeth. And they fought cavities and gingivitis. And that's really what dentistry was all about, right? Fighting the crisis. And they said, wait a minute, we know how to prevent this. We know how to promote your health when it comes to dental health. If we just have to educate people and get them to do these things every single day, they'll be able to have their dental their teeth and their dental health be maintained for a lifetime. And guess what? 3 generations of that, they turned it around 180 degrees. They revolutionized their industry. Now what do dentists talk about? They talk about how straight your teeth are and how white they are, right? Very small fraction or percentage of what they do now is fighting cavities and gingivitis. And when you compare that to our healthcare system, and you ask yourself, where are we in that road of evolution to revolution? All right, we're still fighting the cavities and gingivitis. We even haven't touched on the things that we need to be doing on an everyday basis to promote our health when it comes to physical, mental, and nutritional aspects of our health. All right, but that's what we're going to show you tonight. All right, so I always tell people, if that still doesn't hit home for you, compare this to money. We all understand money, right? So if I were to say, hey, you want to become wealthy,
And you say, how would you go about doing that? How would you go about getting the strategies on how to become wealthy? There's three ways you can approach it. There's the treatment of poverty, there's the prevention of poverty, there's the promotion of wealth. Do you understand that the prevention of poverty and the treatment of poverty will never get you wealthy, but the promotion of wealth is? Meaning that if you were to surround yourself and do the things that other wealthy people do, that you mimic those things, that you most likely you will get the same outcomes. All right? And when you look at healthcare, when we do research and we do all these studies, what are we doing? We're mostly studying sickness and disease. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, all right, but we hardly and rarely do any type of studies on what healthy people need to do. All right? I want to know the aspects, the strategies, and the details that I need to do on an everyday basis so I can make sure that I stay healthy and get healthier. All right? So, with that, we're going to show you these three categories. It comes from eating well, moving well, and thinking well. And this is how we want to show you a better way to better health.
So if you look at your lifestyle, if you look at it all encompassing, everything that you're doing as far as moving, eating, and thinking, you can probably find that you are either deficient or toxic in one of them. And you could be absolutely flawless in one, right? You meditate every single day, you're not stressed at all. But if you're eating like crap every single day, it's like driving a car with one tire flat. You're going to end up tearing the entire thing apart. So it's really important to take an all-encompassing view of your life and make sure that you're performing well in all ranges of these aspects. So what we want to do is make sure that you are given strategies that you can implement immediately, things that you can walk away from and just start doing right away. So I want to start with eating well, what we're consuming, our fuel. Most of you are probably familiar with this image here on the left. It's the food pyramid, right? Most of us were taught this. You'll hear it referred to as the standard American diet, which we abbreviate as SAD for a reason. It's a sad, sad way to eat. This is a way of eating that is, most of your caloric intake is based on bread, cereal, rice, pasta, and decades of eating like this is one of the reasons that we have a lot of generational diseases, things like diabetes, obesity. So this is really not a great way to eat. Now, some of you may be less familiar with this image here on the right. It's called My Plate. Michelle Obama really championed this in 2010. There's a lot more information on choosemyplate.gov, but the basic breakdown is that 50% of your plate, half of what you eat, should be from live foods, fruit and vegetables. You want to make sure that your ratio is appropriate, 2 times as many servings as vegetables as fruits, because you still want to be watching your sugar intake and how your insulin's reacting. Now, low sugar foods are, fruits are things like berries, citrus, veggies, of course, anything leafy, green, root vegetable. The other half of your plate should come from whole grains. You can get funky here, things like amaranth, quinoa, and the other quarter here should be from protein. Obviously, lean protein is good for you, things like fish, chicken, but you can also find great protein sources from things like legumes, seitan, tofu. Healthy fat is included in this protein part, but my favorite thing about this plate is where the dairy is. It is off the plate, which should indicate to you that dairy is not necessary. But a lot of us were raised to think it is so that we can get our calcium, right? Now, is there calcium in the dairy? Of course, there's a ton of it, but it's not particularly bioavailable to humans. We have a hard time breaking down the protein that it's attached to. It's attached to a protein called casein. Baby cows have 4 stomachs to do this. We only have 1. So we don't do a great job breaking it down and actually accessing the calcium. In fact, in the entire world, we're one of the highest consumers of dairy products, but we also have one of the highest levels of osteoporosis. So clearly this isn't working for us. Now, at this point, we can also talk about inflammatory states. Your body has a particular pH level, and that's where we run best. So if you think about the pH scale, right, 7 is neutral, below that is acidic, and above that is alkaline. Humans run best at slightly alkaline, about 7.35. Now, this comes from a high plant-based diet. It's a great idea to figure out what pH level you're at. We will find that a lot of our patients are having trouble healing optimally because they're very acidic, they're highly inflamed. Because this inflammation it isn't localized. It ends up being systemic. It impacts your gut. It impacts your arteries, your ligaments, your discs. So if we're trying to adjust your body back to an appropriate position and your body's trying to heal, it's trying desperately to do that, and you're highly acidic, you're inflamed, that's going to slow the process down. So I really recommend that you get a status check. You figure out whether or not you are acidic or alkaline. The best way to do that is the old test that I used to have us do in school. Remember those litmus papers? You can get them pretty much anywhere now. Most pharmacies will have them. You test your saliva first thing in the morning before you've consumed anything, before you brushed your teeth, and then you compare it to the little chart on the back, and it will give you a color to compare. And don't be too terribly surprised if you don't know your status, that you're anywhere from a 3 to a 5, you're highly acidic. If that's the case, the best way to start to alkalize yourself immediately is to increase your water intake, increase your leafy green vegetable intake, and decrease acidic foods, so things like coffee, alcohol, red meat. Those are all going to start to heal your body more quickly. If you do find you're acidic, I usually recommend that people test themselves once or twice a week until they find they're consistently alkaline, and then just check themselves about once a month. Now, moving on, pun fully intended, movement patterns. So humans are meant to move. We are supposed to be. It keeps our joints healthy, it keeps our brains healthy, it keeps our cardiovascular system healthy. But what do most of us do? We sit, right? We pick that up from school, and then it gets continued on into most of our professional life. So if you look at, this is a cadaver, a sagittal cut of a body, so right through the body right here, and this is an x-ray of the exact same one. Now, the brain and the cerebellum here are sending signals down the spinal cord. Those are the vertebra and healthy discs. These signals are being sent up and down the spinal cord at a rate of about 270, 290 impulses per second. So you can see how smooth a pathway that is there for phase 1. So a problem that hasn't been there that long. But if you look here at phase 3, something that's been there much, much longer, you can see all of the obstacles here that those signals have to get through. Now, what do those signals do? Where do those nerves go? To everything below the neck. They control your heart, they control your lungs, they control your kidneys, everything you depend on to function. So those signals need to get through quickly and efficiently. Why do you care? This is how our body maintains homeostasis. It's how we respond to our environment and react to it appropriately. So when Christopher Reeves, when Superman fell off the horse, he fractured his C2 vertebra here. He had a heavy dissection of the spinal cord. So the information wasn't getting through the way it was meant to. He didn't damage any organs at all, but ultimately what he ended up dying of was heart failure because the signals from the brain weren't getting through to the heart. It's no different than a patient like this who's had that problem for decades, and those signals have been getting through more and more slowly, and the organ system is starting to respond. So our job is to detect these subluxations using imaging to find exactly where they are and correct them. Your job is to strengthen your body around them so that your body holds them and it keeps it in the correct place so your nervous system can function and you can heal. Now, to do that, we're using a very specific part of your nervous system. It's called proprioception. If you haven't heard of proprioception, you can think of it as your sixth sense. In fact, that's what the Nobel Prize they won when they studied about it. It's called proprioception, sixth sense. So as an example, if you take your 2 index fingers and you close your eyes and you touch them together over the top of your head, that illustrates what proprioception is. How did I do that? I couldn't see them, couldn't smell them, couldn't hear them. I could feel them. I knew exactly where they were in time and space. That's what proprioception is. There's very specific nerve endings that control this, and they're called mechanoreceptors. They are densest in the joints of our body, but particularly in the discs of our spine. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. To do that, we have to ask you to invest in a very expensive piece of equipment. I'm kidding. These balls are about $15 to $20. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're sizing it appropriately. So they come in 55, 65, and 75 centimeter sizes. If you're below 5'1", you're going to want to get a 55 centimeter ball. If you're above 6 feet, you're going to go for 75. If you're in between, you go in between. So the first thing to do is just sit on the ball. This is called active sitting. What you're likely doing now is called passive sitting, meaning you're relying on something else to hold you up. I can't do that. I have to engage my core muscles to stay upright here. Now, some of you at this point in your care might be so deconditioned, the subluxation might have been there so long that even this isn't comfortable for you. It might feel unstable and unsteady. That's okay. Just make sure the ball's up against a wall or in a corner so that you are stable. When you sit on the ball, you want to make sure your knees are either below your hips or at 90 degrees with your hips, never above, so you don't want to be sunk down. Now, there's 3 planes of motion that all joints, that your spine in particular, moves through. If you're watching this, the likelihood is that you are in the stabilization period of your care, meaning we're seeing you approximately 3 times a week. So these exercises I'm about to show you are on your handout. You'll have access to them, but we want to show you how to do them appropriately. So you'll be doing these on days you don't get adjusted. We're going for a high repetition here, so you want to do 15 to 20 ranges of motion in each plane of motion. You want to do that 3 rounds each time you do it. So the first plane of motion beyond active sitting is flexion extension, so pelvis forward and backwards. The next is side to side, lateral bend, and the final one is rotation in clockwise and counterclockwise. You'll notice these aren't global motions. I'm not rolling all around. They're very controlled, they're intentional, and they're using the core and the low back to really make them happen. You might be sore afterwards, kind of along the belt line here. You will feel these muscles fatigue. Soreness is good, it means you're doing it right. Now, you may look at this and think, hey, that looks super easy. Good for you. The best thing about these exercises is you can level them up to your comfort level, to your capability, and keep yourself challenged. The best way to do that is by taking away one of your stabilization points. So you can get a wobble board. I use a tennis ball. You can put it under 1 foot to start and go through the ranges of motion, eventually go to 2 feet, and you can just keep yourself challenged all the way up until you kind of level yourself up to a more comfortable level. So definitely start utilizing these. These balls, they have really great implications throughout all of your life, and I'll show you a few more in just a second. But the overall equation that we're going for here is your adjustments plus the exercises, both these and the ones specific to your case, minus your bad habits. Over time, that's when we're going to see the changes that we want. The ADIO here, that stands for above, down, inside, out. The brain is going to send the signals from above, down the spinal cord, and out through your body, and your body will heal. A cut is always going to heal. A broken bone is always going to heal. Your body wants to. Be patient with the process. A lot of the problems we have, they're more chronic. They've been there a long time. Your body's always trying to help you, so just be patient. Healing's not always linear. These balls, they can be used every day. I really like them in the workplace. It's a great way to just kind of put the ball where most Americans live, in front of the TV or in front of the computer, right? So it's keeping yourself challenged, keeping your core engaged. Standing desks are another great option. The CDC came out a few years ago and said that sitting is the new smoking. It's having really, really bad effects on our cardiovascular system, as well as deconditioning effects on our body. So anything you can do to get yourself up out of the seated position, I really think in corporate America within the next few years, these are going to be pretty standard. We've also seen these balls implemented with great success in classrooms. A lot of kids who've been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, it's more of a cerebellar feedback issue. Their brain just their body needs to move for their brain to function appropriately. So if you put them on a ball and let them gently bounce, their test scores actually go up, and that helps with adults as well. BMI, this is something you put in here because we get a lot of questions from patients about what's a healthy weight. This is one of the ways to calculate that. This does not take your body phenotype into account. So whether you're an ectomorph, kind of tall and thin, a mesomorph is more muscular, and endomorph tends to be shorter and wider. But the overall equation is your body weight in pounds divided by your height in inches squared, so multiplied by 703. I have no idea why that number, somebody smarter than I came up with this. When you do that equation, it will spit out a digit. A healthy weight is considered less than 25. Overweight is 25 to 29.9, and over 30 is considered obese. Now, you might be wondering how Americans kind of stack up to this. The latest research is indicating that 75% of adult Americans are overweight and 33% are obese. So if you aren't sure what phenotype you are, the best thing to do is really look at a family picture. But the thing that you can control about this particular equation is your weight. So if you have any further questions about this, just talk to me or one of the other doctors.
So that brings us to the third and final lifestyle area that we have complete control over, that will influence whether or not we're healthy or we're toxic in our lives. And that's the mental part, how we think. And when we talk about the mental part, we're not referring to diagnosable mental illnesses. Rather, we're referring to how do we handle stress in our life? How do we calm our minds? We need to have strategies in place for that as well. If we look at some of the countries that perform better than we do in the World Health Organization health indices, a lot of those countries are in Asia. In Asia, they have strategies they implement even in their childhood to work on calming the mind. They do things like meditation, martial arts, qigong, tai chi, and that's just a part of their culture. In America, we don't do as good of a job with that. To contrast that just with a typical day in America, how do we start the day? The alarm clock goes off, all right? So we wake up with a startle, and then we dash to the kitchen to start drinking stimulant. Then after that, we're herding our kids together, trying to get 4 kids into the back of the Suburban to get them off to school, always running late because somebody couldn't find their shoes. We get into the car finally, we're heading off in a hurry, we hit gridlock traffic on 620 or 2222, slowed up, finally get the kids dropped off, back to Starbucks for more stimulant, and then as we're merging on the Mopac, somebody in a Jeep cuts us off and we spill coffee all over our laps. And that's kind of how a lot of us are living our lives day after day after day. Today, the stresses are different. Now we're worried about taking care of the kids. When's the virus going to end? How are we going to get our work done and manage the kids and make sure they're watching their virtual classroom? But we've always got stress in our life. Stress is something that we can't get rid of, but we have to find ways to mitigate the effects of stress in our lives. Does that make sense? If we don't, the longer we're in this stressed out, sympathetic condition, the more it breaks down our bodies. So if we look at physiologically what's happening, let's venture back to primitive times. I'm caveman gathering berries down by the watering hole. When I'm doing something like that in a pleasurable state or anticipation of pleasure, that's called a parasympathetic state. That's where the nervous system is calm, and as a result, our heart rate's slower, our blood pressure's lower, and our body can heal and repair itself in that condition. Now, if a saber-toothed tiger jumps out from behind a rock all of a sudden, does our state change? Of course it does. We shift from parasympathetic into sympathetic. In a sympathetic state, the heart rate increases, blood pressure increases. We begin to release chemicals into our bloodstream designed to make sure we don't bleed to death if we're cut. Everything within us changes. That's the appropriate response to a real threat. That's a survival response. That's called a sympathetic or a fight or flight response. And that's what we want to have happen in the face of a real threat. But our body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an imagined threat. I react the same way if I open the mailbox and there's a letter from the IRS, or if I hear cars, tires screeching behind me when I'm on Mopac as somebody's is braking. If we stay in that state all day long, then it causes our body to break down because those chemicals designed to save our lives, if they stay in our systems too long, they begin to break things down. Does that make sense? So we have to find a way to move from sympathetic into parasympathetic in order to build our bodies back up. All right, there are some strategies that we want to share with you that will help you to do that. One simple strategy is just to look at how you begin your day. Rather than starting in a startled state, and frequently the first thing we do is we check our phones when we first wake up. Who emailed us in the middle of the night? What's the latest news feed? What are they saying on Facebook? So we're turning over how our day goes to a large extent to somebody else. So rather than doing that, we need strategies that actually feed us, that are good for us. What are we doing in terms of food to begin our day? Good nourishment. How can we calm things down? Meditation, prayer, journaling, those sorts of things. What about working out to begin our day? All those things that we can do to help move us into a better state of mind have a big influence on how the rest of our day goes and whether we start out in sympathetic or parasympathetic. I hope that makes sense. Now, cardiologists have a way to measure the impact of stress on our lives and how well our body is handling stress, and it's called variable heart rate, or HRV. What that measures is the length of time between heartbeats, all right? And what I mean by that is when we're in a sympathetic state, stressed out, our heart rate not only beats faster, but it tends to be very regular. And that's how our body responds to stress. When we're in a parasympathetic state, our heart rate slows down, but it also becomes more irregular. So what we want to have in this measurement, which is a biometric like blood pressure, we want to see a high variable heart rate, meaning the variability of the heart rate's more. That shows our body's handling stress better. This is used by cardiologists as a predictive indicator of how, whether we may be set up for a future cardiac event, how well our body's handling stress, and that's how they use that information. Now, 3 things have been proven to increase the variability of our heart rate, our HRV. One is diaphragmatic breathing, something we can do very simply. We can do it to begin our day. We can do it if we get in a stressed out situation. And what all that is a very deep breath through the nose. Pretend like you're pulling your diaphragm all the way down to your pelvis. Hold for 5 seconds and then release all the way out. You can do 7 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Now, if you do 5 to 10 of those, you'll notice that your heart rate slows way down. That's that response to that. So that's a simple tool you can use when you're feeling stressed out. We recommend you start your day by doing that. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, try doing that lying there in bed. The second thing that's been shown to improve HRV is meditation. Now, there are a lot of different ways you can do meditation. There's apps out there, there's books out there. One of the things that we show our patients to do in terms of meditation is back to the breathing thing, is that you get into a quiet place where you're not going to be disturbed. You set your timer for 10 minutes, and then you begin to meditate. And the way we recommend meditating is take a breath in through your nose, hold for a second, let it out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And continue to do that for those 10 minutes until the timer goes off. If 10 minutes is too long, start with 5. Now what happens as you do that? What happens? Your mind begins to wander, right? And that's a normal process. When you notice that, just gently bring your thoughts back to focusing on your breath. And you'll continue to do that for the entire 10 minutes. That's a very simple way that you can meditate. Now, what that tends to do, it calms the nervous system down. It impacts the immune system. It has a tremendous amount of health benefits that will actually help you. It increases energy. So again, that's something to add into your daily routine also, 5 to 10 minutes of daily meditation, and it has the effect of lowering your HRV. The third thing that's been out there proven, and there's 3 studies listed here where they published the results of it, were chiropractic adjustments. Following a chiropractic adjustment, the biometrics showed that the variability of your heart rate, your HRV, increased, which is what we want to see. So what that proved is chiropractic adjustments help your body to better handle stress. So another benefit you may not have been aware of. Now, the third strategy we have for managing stress, we feel like if you're allowing other people's impact, influence in your life to overly influence the way you handle your day, you're probably not living up to your purpose. Sometimes we bring this up and people kind of roll their eyes at us, but we think everybody should take the time once a year to sit down and write down, what is my purpose? What do I want to accomplish while I'm here on this planet? That little dash between the born and died dates. What was my purpose for being here? When we do that, goals as well, when we have that clearly established, it helps us better decide what to say yes to and what to say no to. Does that make sense? Kind of to illustrate that, if I handed you a jigsaw puzzle with 1,000 pieces in it, we laid it all out on the table, but I hid the box top with a picture from you, how difficult would it be to put that puzzle together? Pretty difficult, right? But if we then put the picture out on the tabletop, it gets a lot easier. Well, if we think of every day of our life as one of those puzzle pieces, all right, it's a lot easier to put the puzzle together if we know what we're shooting for. That's how that statement of purpose works in our life. We know what we're shooting for in our life, and some of the things that we're being pulled to do, if they don't fit into the purpose, those are the things we need to get rid of. By doing that, we have less stress. So I want to tell you that we have an entire workshop on handling stress. These are excerpts from that workshop. If you know that stress is a problem for you and maybe getting in the way of you being as healthy as you can, take the time to watch our workshop. It's on our website. We have other workshop titles as well there. How to eat right, how to lose weight, how to improve immune system function, as well as how to better handle stress. We have these as resources for you. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Now, which one of these sets of teeth needs to see a dentist? I hope you said both. If you're this person, this is going to be very difficult to get you back to here. I hope you're this person. Obviously, this is a much better time to see the dentist than here. Which one of these patients needs to see a chiropractor? Why wait until you're here before you enjoy the benefits of chiropractic care? Why not have your children checked to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed? All right, sometimes people don't think about chiropractic care with children. Well, I'm going to show you how committed we are to taking care of children. This is Dr. Ross. You probably know Dr. Ross, his wife, and his oldest child, shortly after his child was born. He's 9 years old now, so this is an old picture. But what I want to tell you about Dr. Ross, Dr. Ross's child was born at home. Shortly after his son was born, he gave him his very first adjustment. That's how committed he was. When I was in chiropractic school, I had 2 children. My kids are now 22 and 24. Both of my daughters had their first adjustment during their first week of life. Not because they had developed problems, but because we wanted to give them the best chance of having their spines and nervous system developed optimally. So if you have questions about children, if you have a child or a grandchild that you'd like us to check, talk to us about that in your next office visit about how that might benefit you. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is I want to revisit our patient Devin that we told you about earlier on one of your previous visits. As you may recall, Devin came to see us struggling with a number of health conditions, but his main complaint was that he was having behavioral issues and he'd been diagnosed with ADD. Now, his mother had taken him to all kinds of doctor's offices before he got here to try to get help with that, and nothing had worked out very well. So we did his initial exam. As you recall, this was that initial exam. Posture way off, problems in his spine, and his nervous system was what really jumped out at us. You'll notice the severe areas of irritation at the top and bottom of the spine. The significance of that is these are the parasympathetic parts of the nervous system. When we saw his parasympathetic nervous system in this much distress, we knew that was having a significant impact on his behavior. So we accepted his case and began to work with him. At the end of his course of care, this was the follow-up exam we did. Notice the difference. As his spine straightened out, the pressure on the nerves was relieved, and this is what his nervous system looked like. As a result of this, his mother, we went over these results with his mother, she got very emotional and began to cry. And then she said, "Let me tell you something. I tried to find a solution for years for my child. 6 years in and out of all kinds of doctor's offices, taking all kinds of drugs, hormones, various different therapists. We could never get any help for him until we came here. Why didn't somebody tell me sooner?" And the only response we could make was, "We don't know." But what we do know is if all you've been given is option A, and option A, which option are you going to choose? Some of you may have chosen us as an option B because option A didn't work for you. If you know somebody who needs an option B, please share your experience with us with them as well.
So just how Devin found his way to health and he found his path and his journey in our office, we want you to do the same thing. We do not want you to take your care very lightly. We are honored that you've chosen our office and chosen us doctors to take care of you. Now, what resources are available to you? We have a slew of areas where you can help enhance your experience here. Anywhere from our more advanced workshops. We do workshops that on their standalone topics from nutrition, things like eat right or die young, from exercise, train smart, not hard, posture, core, and we also do workshops on detoxification. And we post them in our newsletter, on our calendars here in our office. You're going to receive our newsletter via email if you shared that with us. You notice our televisions here in our office also constantly giving you strategies and information. In our change rooms when you come into our office, change weekly. All right, and we're talking to you every time you come into our office in terms of ways you can improve your health. So engage in all of it. We want to be your health coaches. Just how you have other coaches in your life to make those areas of your life better, anywhere from financial coach, for example. We want to be your health coaches. So be well, choose well, and I want to make sure that you guys explore everything we have to offer. If you'd like to see our workshops from past years and the other ones we've done before, just go on our website under Watch a Workshop, and you'll see a list of the workshops we've done in the past. But make sure you come to the live ones as well. You get so much out of it.
You'll also notice in our office that you see a lot of groups of people or families, and we love that. It's because people come in and they see what we do and how we do it, and they want to get the people that they love and care about checked. And that's what we want, is to build a community. We love that part. So if there's anybody that you know that needs help or that you want to get checked, speak to one of your doctors, because we usually know the direction.
So the last thing, for those of you who are watching this at home, we have homework. What we want you to do is take the time to fill out each of these 4 questions. Which strategy will you implement first? Which strategy do you think will be the most difficult to implement? In which area we discussed you need additional information or tools in order to implement it. We want to be a resource for you. Lastly, who do you know you want to share this information with? That may be the most important question. We want you to bring those with you to your next appointment. We will review them with you. We want to make sure, again, that you get the absolute most you can out of
We'll see you at your next
Next
adjustment.
adjustment.